All right, so picture this, right? It's a game night. You're with your friends, snacks everywhere, dice ready for those critical rolls. You know the vibe.
Oh, yeah.
But, and let's be real, how many times do those campaigns you start actually see like a real finish line?
Right.
Life happens, new hobbies pop up, that new video game comes out.
That's true.
It's a tale as old as time.
Right.
But then you get this story, and this is wild. Get this. A D&D campaign that didn't just finish. It ran for 40 years.
Wow.
40 years. That's 4 decades of quests, battles, magic. I mean, who knows what else went down in there. This isn't just rolling some dice. This is like they built their own little civilization on pure imagination.
That's incredible.
And that's what we're diving into today. How this campaign didn't just survive, but thrived for so long.
I'm intrigued already.
So we found this article from LitRPG Reads. By the way, side note, if you're into those fantasy novels, the ones that get into the nitty-gritty of stats and game mechanics, their website is a goldmine. But anyway, the fact that they covered this story, that tells you it's something special even for those die-hard fantasy fans.
Definitely.
So who is the mastermind behind this tabletop empire? Well, meet Robert Wardhaugh, history professor by day, dungeon master extraordinaire by, well, let's be honest, probably also by day.
Right. And honestly, I think that's kind of perfect. History, at its core, it's just storytelling, right? Just on a massive scale.
Oh, that's a good point.
And Robert, he's not just teaching it, he's living it. Through this campaign, he's created what is essentially a living, breathing, historical document. Yeah. Just with, a few more dragons and dungeons than your average textbook.
And speaking of dungeons, can we talk about the fact that this guy has, wait for it, 30,000.
30,000 what?
Hand-painted miniatures.
No way.
30,000. I get overwhelmed just trying to pick a character sheet. This guy's got an army that could conquer a small nation, all painstakingly brought to life with tiny brushes and even tinier pots of paint. It boggles the mind.
That is. Yeah, mind-boggling is the word. And the article doesn't even say how long it took him. I can't even imagine.
Years, probably.
Years, at least. But, it really highlights something really important about tabletop gaming in general.
What's that?
It's not just about the game itself. It's about the whole tactile experience, too, as much as it is about, rolling those dice. The feeling of the miniatures, setting up the terrain. It all builds that immersive experience.
Oh, totally.
And it sounds like Robert's taken that to a whole other level.
Oh, yeah. This isn't just a couple shoeboxes full of plastic dudes, okay? This is next level.
Right.
He's got these miniatures organized by race, creature type, good guys, bad guys, you name it.
Wow.
It's like the Library of Congress, but for mythical beasts and adventurers.
That's amazing.
And the terrain, oh man, forget about it. This isn't just some battle map on graph paper. No, we're talking custom-built forests, deserts. He even has underwater settings.
Underwater?
Underwater. The article actually had some links to resources if you want to try this at home.
Oh, wow.
Although I'd maybe start with, a slightly smaller ecosystem than an entire ocean.
Yeah, baby steps, right.
Baby steps, for sure. But seriously, the detail is incredible. It's like he built a miniature Hollywood studio set in his basement, all dedicated to this decades-long saga.
That's dedication.
Okay, but now I gotta know, right? Even with the coolest miniature collection ever, how do you even play D&D for 40 years? I mean, everyone knows those rule books are intense, to say the least.
Oh, absolutely.
People argue about Monopoly after like an hour. How is this not just dissolved into total rules lawyer chaos for 4 decades straight?
Well, that's where I think Robert's background as both a history professor and indeed this master storyteller, it really comes into play. See, he's not just running like a D&D game. He's running his own heavily homebrewed system.
Okay, so it's like less about knowing every single rule and more about knowing when to bend them, break them, maybe even rewrite them entirely.
Exactly. It's about making it work for you. And remember earlier when we were talking about LitRPG, that whole genre blending thing?
Yeah, with the game mechanics woven into the story.
Right. He's basically doing that, but in real life. He's crafting this living, breathing world where the rules serve the story he and his players want to tell.
Okay, now I need details. What kind of homebrew stuff are we talking here?
So one that really stood out to me reading this was the idea of permanent character death.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In most D&D games, if your character bites the dust, you just roll up a new one, maybe shed a tear for the fallen comrade and jump back in. Not a Robert's game.
Oh, man, that's intense.
Death is final, which, as you can imagine, instantly raises the stakes.
Big time. Every decision, every battle, way more weight to it.
Exactly. And this ties into another fascinating thing, generational storytelling. Now, that is practically unheard of in most D&D campaigns because, well, they just don't last long enough.
Right. Your average campaign's a weekend who's got time for kids and grandkids to inherit their powers.
Right. But here, it's a feature, not a bug. Players' characters, they can rise to power, rule kingdoms, and when the time comes, their descendants, they pick up the mantle.
Oh, wow. Imagine playing the great-grandson of your original hero, dealing with the fallout of choices made decades earlier in the game.
It'd be wild, like playing Civilization, but way more role-playing.
That is amazing. Talk about a legacy. You're not just building a character, you're building a whole dynasty.
Right. And think about it. It just adds this whole other layer of depth to the game. That decision to, like, forge an alliance or go to war.
Yeah.
It could have consequences that echo down through generations of your character's family.
Okay, I gotta ask, though. With 500 characters over the years, have there been any epic family feuds, like rival branches of some elven dynasty duking it out?
Now, that is a story I would love to hear. Unfortunately, the article doesn't go into that level of detail.
Oh, man.
But it does talk about the sense of community that's grown around this game. And, I mean, this isn't just a group of players. This is like a giant extended family. They're bound together by decades of these shared adventures, inside jokes, memories.
That's what gets me about all this. Yeah, the miniatures are insanely cool. The homebrew rules are fascinating. But at its heart, this is about people. About connecting, building something unique, and just having a blast doing it.
It really is.
And it proves that the best games, the really special ones, are the ones that we make our own. Robert didn't just run a campaign. He cultivated a whole world, shaped by the imaginations of hundreds of people over 4 decades.
And that is no small feat.
So we've gone deep into this 40-year D&D campaign, and honestly, I'm blown away. I don't know about you, but my idea of what tabletop gaming can be just got a whole lot bigger.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It's not just about fighting monsters and getting loot. It's about, building something together, creating a whole world, and having a ton of fun doing it.
And it reminds us that sometimes the most rewarding games, the ones that really stick with you, are the ones we design ourselves from the ground up. Robert didn't just run a campaign. He cultivated a living, breathing world shaped by the imaginations of, hundreds of players over 4 decades? That's incredible.
And you know what really stood out to me? The article mentioned that Robert, he calls his basement his gaming space, his sanctuary.
I love that.
But it's clearly become so much more than just a basement, right? It's this testament to shared passion, this place where friendships are made, stories are born, a place where imaginations can just run wild.
That's beautiful. And, it's something we can all strive for in our own lives.
Yeah.
Finding or creating those spaces, those sanctuaries, whether it's a dedicated gaming room, a cozy little reading nook, or even just like an online community where you feel comfortable geeking out.
So true. We might not all have 30,000 hand-painted miniatures or a rule book the size of a dictionary, but everyone has something they're passionate about. We all crave those outlets for creativity and connecting with others.
Absolutely. So here's something to think about as we wrap up. What's your sanctuary? What activity or hobby, what is it for you that lets you tap into that sense of wonder and shared experience?
Ooh, good question. And you know what? It really doesn't have to be as involved as a decades-long D&D campaign. It could be as simple as getting together with friends for a board game or reading a good book or even just having a good conversation with someone you care about.
Exactly. It's about finding those moments of joy and connection in our everyday lives. It's about remembering that even in a world that feels so chaotic and busy all the time, there's always room for a little magic, a little adventure, and a lot of laughter.
Perfectly said. And on that note, that wraps up our deep dive into the world's longest-running D&D campaign.
What a story.
A huge thank you to everyone listening for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive. Until then, may your dice rolls be ever in your favor, and may you always find time to embrace the power of play.